Good evening, everybody. My name is Heidi Brown. Thank you so much for joining in, getting here on time. There's going to be some people still trickling in, but I didn't want to hold you up and get started on our session tonight. So thank you so much for joining in. I'm here in our RE/MAX webinar studio with Joe Gianola, my co-presenter here this evening, the mortgage lender extraordinaire. Todd behind the scenes, so you'll see it, and you'll have Sarah's monitoring the chat, and Daniela is joining us sometime too and works with our buyers. So there's a whole team that makes tonight happen. So thank you for being here and learning about buying your first home in Canada. So I came up with the concept of this topic and versions of this topic when I became a realtor a few years ago to help inform and educate people in the whole process. The real estate market's constantly shifting, and there's a whole lot of money involved with it, lots of decisions. So we're here tonight to give you information to help arm you with what's best practices to get you on the journey of home ownership. We've got a little bit added in. If you're new to Canada, there's a couple of little things there, but this information will hopefully set you a strong foundation moving ahead in buying your first home. As I mentioned, my name is Heidi Brown, and I am a real estate broker with RE/MAX Escarpment. We have 12 offices all around, from Niagara over to the Oakville area, and we sort of are the spot to be with real estate here, and we outperform all of the other competitors in the area because we just have a great committed team of agents behind us. So I'm very thankful to be able to deliver this information to you in one of our great offices in this particular studios. And I myself, in addition to being a real estate broker, I've been an investor, and I have a few rental properties as well as built my own custom home. So I've approached real estate from a number of different avenues. And my sister has been in real estate for 20 years. My father was in construction. So I've sort of in various areas within real estate over most of my life. So that's why I'm here. I'm passionate about home ownership, and I'm hoping that you will be too by the end of it, of this session, if you're not already. And I'm so lucky to have Joe Gianola here. He's with Mission 35 Mortgages, and we have a great alliances between all of our brokerages and Mission 35 Mortgages. And Joe is just a wealth of knowledge. And what's great about Joe's experiences, I mean, he's an investor and owner, and he's a great guy, but he's also been on the other side of the table of lending. So he knows the ins and outs, and I think he said the road mines or landmines, landmines to navigate. So that's kind of a good guy to know to have. So he's going to be talking a lot this evening about what you need to do for your real estate funding journey. So this webinar is going to be recorded. Are we recording, Todd? And good stuff. And this will be posted on my YouTube channel. Subscribe if you haven't already, as well as if you want any updates and tips on things. We've got all my social channels that are there under Heidi Brown Homes. I'd love to be able to connect with you and share information, answer any questions, or help in any way. So this evening's session, we're going to talk about just high level sort of when and why to buy a home, the financial piece, which is critical and sort of your big first step, and then any incentive programs that are out there. And then after that, just a high level overview on the steps to buy and we will leave time for question and answer at the end. I wanted to bring to your attention, I have produced this guide here, the link will be at the end, that really goes over in great detail some of the steps to buying your home, your first home. So links and information, if you're not capturing everything through the session tonight, there's even more content in here. So please feel free to click the link, and we'll be sharing it in the text strings that are coming out to you as well coming up. And feel free to book time with myself. There's a booking link to my calendar that Sarah will be sharing with you. So if you have particular questions, that's where we can answer it if you don't want to answer any questions in the forum, or you want to talk about your situation. So that's there for you. Now, question, why buy a home? So you're here, so you're interested in buying a home. So I wanted to just, I explained to you, I'm a firm believer in home ownership and all that it brings to financial security. So I just have one little slide here that talks about the benefits of home ownership. The beauty of owning your home versus renting it is that each and every month that you're paying money towards the roof over your head, a portion of what you pay towards that roof over your head is going to be reserved and kept for you in the form of equity. So in the form of paying down a mortgage versus when you pay for a roof over your head when it's to a landlord and you're renting, you don't realize any particular gains financially from that. Now, over time, historically, the house that you purchase goes up in value over time. Yes, there's cycles, hills and valleys. We hit a peak last year around this time or a little bit earlier, and then there was a steady decline, but guess what? We're on the way up. But historically, the trend line does go up. So you've got twofold. You're paying down your mortgage and your loan on your monthly payment. You wouldn't have that if you're renting. And then you're realizing the gain and the increase in the equity as things go up. So Royal LePage actually did a survey last year, and they sort of took a typical house, GTA area, 3-bedroom. They looked at what it would cost to buy versus rent. The monthly expenses were very similar in price, but when you bought, you had $769 was their calculation on what you would sort of realize as savings, reduction of your mortgage every month, and you multiply out over typical 5 years of your first mortgage. That's $46,000 savings that you would never realize if you're renting. And then remember, the escalating value of homes going up, you take that 46,000, add it to something else, and you're well on your way in realizing additional financial gains that you wouldn't have necessarily realized if you were renting. Now, in Canada and many countries in the world, home ownership really is a strong foundation of people's financial stability as well as their retirement planning. So overall, really a solid decision. So we're hoping that you see the benefits of it and enjoy it. So what exactly is happening in the market? High level overview. I did mention that we hit a peak in the pricing, and then prices of homes started to decline since about last March or April. And that was sort of directly related to, and I want to get into the money part of things, but interest raised. Bank of Canada started to raise interest rates. So the interest rates went up, prices went down, and everybody was sort of going, where are things going? And I think that there was 9 or so, maybe 10 interest rate increases. I lost count at 7, 8, I don't know, that was a lot. And so every time there was a new increase, another increase, another increase, counting. Right? So it was pretty crazy. And so everybody was in a holding pattern trying to figure out what was going on. So that has now sort of halted. The last Bank of Canada is sort of in a holding pattern. and there is predictions that we're going to stay term and look at maybe a reduction in interest rates going forward, right? So we don't have that crystal ball that says exactly what's going to happen, but you can predict all these experts in finance it can kind of give you a bit of a hint indication, but there's always like a wild card when something might come up. So definitely lots of activity right now. The spring market is starting and it's feeling like it's here. It's been quite quiet and much different compared to the last couple of years, which were chaos. And we're looking at what is sort of more typical markets, and there's more activities. There's still a shortage of some of the inventory on the market, but there's definitely movement that's there. And this was just a little chart because another consideration is, interest rates have gone up, but prices have gone down. Like, what does that really mean? So this was just a chart that RBC did earlier this year that I just borrowed. And it just demonstrates a typical home at 3 points in time over the last year. And what does that mean bottom line? So typically February last year, the mortgage amount was say $800,000. That same home price went down to $720 mid-year last year and continued to decrease until February of this year. So a steady decline in the price of homes, however, a steady increase in the interest rates. These are predictive rates. There is some lenders that are offering specials, but as you can see, we were at just under 3% mid-year last year, 4.5%, and then we're looking at a little over 5% now. So what does that mean? So when you look at the bottom line, does it really cost more or not per month? There was very little change in when you took this scenario and you looked at it from, we're at 3,700 and beginning of last year, then mid-year 39, and then beginning of this year 3,800. So you can see with all of these shifts, bottom line, there wasn't really significant change. Of course, this is just an idea and a scenario, but it just demonstrates that it's, where the payments are and how things are sort of looking. So I am now going to pass it over to Joe because first and foremost, it's the money man. And you need to be taking care of the money because that's step number one. So I'm going to pass it over to Joe, who's going to go through everything you need to know about the money part.
Thank you very much, Heidi. And thank you for having me on your webinar. It's always fun. Love working with you. So yeah, let's talk about money, because obviously you got to get your money right before you buy a house. So interest rates. Let's talk about that. I want to talk about that just really quickly, because you showed that example. What's really interesting is the fixed rates have actually come down. It's the variable rate that's been going up. The fixed rates went up too, but they've been coming down. The reason why that's interesting is because that lowers your qualifying rate. So because the fixed rates have come down, they're back in the 4s again. Now we can qualify people on like 6.8% instead of like 7.5%. That makes a big difference on how much you qualify for. So yeah, that's a good thing. That's That's going to heat the market up really quickly. We're already seeing increases. So the rates went up, prices went down, and then the rates are starting to come down again. People can get more money, prices start to go up again. It's pretty simple. You want to get in there before they go down a lot. If the rates go down a lot, you better believe those prices are going to skyrocket. So let's talk about money. So there's 3 key elements to a mortgage application. First being income. Okay, so we'll just talk about a few basic types of income. If you have any unique questions about certain types of income or whatever, you could post it in the chat, and we could always talk about it in the Q&A. So first, most obvious is just a salary, basic salary. If you're a salaried employee, we can use your full salary before tax, and we just need a letter of employment and a pay stub. Very simple. If you are an hourly employee with like guaranteed hours, like for instance, if you're a permanent full-time nurse, for instance, you're guaranteed a certain amount of hours. We can use those hours. We can use all of them, similar to salary, pay stub, letter of employment. Anything that's not guaranteed, that's where it becomes a little bit more, I don't want to say challenging, but it's a little bit more paperwork. So if you're an hourly employee but your hours are not guaranteed, the lender is going to want to see a 2-year average. If you want to use commission income or bonus income or overtime, anything like that, the lender always wants to see a 2-year history. If you're self-employed, the lender typically wants to see 2 years of tax returns. Unless we're using an alternative lender, then there's different ways of getting things done. And then one other thing I want to talk about, you know what, I'll talk about co-borrowers at the end. Let's go through down payment first. Next is down payment. So you can have a down payment as low as 5%. Okay. That's called a high ratio mortgage. There is an insurance premium that needs to be paid, but you don't have to pay it out of pocket. It just gets added right onto your mortgage. Okay. There's also some cashback options that are available. So for instance, say you don't have quite enough money for like your closing costs, which is like your lawyer, your land transfer tax, that type of thing, or maybe you have like a credit card or something that needs to be paid out in order to qualify for the mortgage. The cashback is a good option. So basically what they'll do is they'll give you up to 3%, possibly more depending on the down payment amount. They'll give you up to 3% on a high ratio mortgage, which you could use, to pay the closing costs and all that fun stuff. They'll give you that in exchange for a slightly higher interest rate. Okay. Down payment can be from own resources. Down payment can come as a gift from family. Okay. I always say, if it's your first home, now's the time to ask for favors, right? So we're talking co-borrowers, we're talking down payment. There's ways to, like, for instance, if somebody wants to, if you ask somebody for help for a down payment, there's ways to give them security. There's ways to help them feel better about giving you that money, which we could talk about more in depth another time. But yeah, the more help you can get, the easier it's going to be to get into the market, right? It's very difficult to buy a home on your own. So if you can get somebody else involved, that's great. The money's coming from, the money has to be, if the money's coming from out of the country, You want to try and have it in the country for at least 90 days before we use it for a down payment. If not, it's not impossible, but it certainly creates kind of like a paperwork nightmare, shall we say, if the money's overseas. So those are a few things to take into consideration for down payment. And then last, we'll talk about credit. Ideally, you want a credit score over 700. That's kind of like the magic number. If you're over 700, you're good. That doesn't mean it's impossible to get a mortgage with a credit score of less than 700. There's definitely still options there. You want to have minimal outside debt. So you don't want to have big credit card balances. You don't want to have big car loan payments. You don't want to have big credit line payments. If you have like a big student loan, try and negotiate the smallest payment possible. So it's all about minimum debt load, okay? And then finally, I know we touched on this a little bit, co-borrowers. A co-borrower makes a big difference, huge difference. Even if you have somebody that only makes like, say 30 or 40 grand a year, if they have a minimal debt load, so like for instance, say you have a parent that's retired and they own their home free and clear, they make maybe $30,000 or $40,000 in pension, it's a perfect co-borrower. That extra $30,000, $40,000 takes your mortgage from here to like here. It makes that much of a difference. We talked about down payment. If you can get your down payment up to 20%, that's the magic number. If you get up to 20%, now your mortgage can be stretched over 30 years. Now we can, we can get exceptions. It's a lot easier to get exceptions when you have 20% down. And the most important thing, you don't have to pay the high ratio insurance premium. That could save you literally tens of thousands of dollars. So if there's a way that you can get family to help you out to get that 20% down, save you tons of money. Yes, and then I think did we want to talk about first-time home buyer? We're talking about that later. Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
First-time home
There it
buyers.
is.
There we go.
Perfect. Let's go for it. All right, so first-time home buyer incentives. The first is the RRSP. Okay, so basically the way that an RRSP works, if you don't know, you put your money into an RRSP, it's tax deductible. So it goes against your income. So if you make $50,000 a year and you put $5,000 into an RRSP, it's like you only made $45,000 a year. So you pay tax on $45,000 instead of $50,000. So you could do that with an RRSP. Now, the catch is if you take money out of an RRSP, it's treated just like income. So if you take $5,000 out of your RRSP, it's like you made an extra $5,000 that year, and now you have to pay tax on that. Okay. The exception is when you go to buy your first home. So when you go to buy your first home, you get that tax credit by putting the money in, but when you take it out, they don't hit you with taxes as long as you use it for the down payment of a house. You do have to pay it back, but you have like 20 years to pay it back. So trust me, that's not going to be an issue. 20 years from now, the money that you pulled out of your RSP is not gonna hurt you. So that's one perk. Second is the first-time homebuyer incentive that the government. I'm not a huge fan of it. It's basically sharing equity in your home with the government. It's very hard to qualify for. I've literally never sold one. No one's ever qualified for one. I don't even know why it exists, but I'm always happy to talk about it. Next is the land transfer tax credit. So if you're a first-time home buyer, you get a credit on your land transfer tax, which could save you, I think it's up to $4,000 per applicant. So it could save you.
Maybe just explain the land transfer tax, that there is a tax.
What's that?
Just to maybe mention that there is a tax.
That there's a land transfer tax?
Yeah, because they might not go, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a land transfer. So when you go to buy real estate, you have to pay what's called land transfer tax. And it's usually around 1 to 1.5% of the purchase price. But if you're a first-time home buyer, you get a lot of that credited back. So it saves you a lot of money there, okay? And that's for everybody, as long as you're a first-time home buyer. And then the last is the first-time home buyer savings account, the FHSA. This is brand new, it just got released
April 1st.
April 1st, yeah. It's exactly like the RRSP, exactly the same thing. You put the money in, you get the tax deductible, you can pull it out for the purchase of your first home. The nice part about it is that you don't have to pay it back. So that 20-year thing, that's gone. You don't have to worry about that anymore. So those are your first-time home buyer incentives. What do we got next?
New to Canada in requirements.
New to Canada. All right. So let's go over some important points here. First is your immigration status. Okay. So if you just landed in the country recently, within like the last 5 years, you have to have at least a work permit and applied for your permanent residency. Okay. If you meet those two criteria, okay, perfect. We could look at the application. Second is your credit requirements. So if you're new to the country, you're not going to have much credit, right? And that's understood. So the lenders have some workarounds for that. If you're putting 5% down and you're new to Canada, the lender's going to want to see a foreign credit bureau. So let's just say you came from the UK, for instance. They're going to say, okay, give me a copy of the UK credit bureau. Or maybe you came from the States. If you came from the States, they're going to want to see a US credit bureau. So that's simple enough. The issue is if you come from a country that doesn't have credit bureaus, which happens a lot, right? In those cases, the lender typically wants 10% down, okay? And they're going to want to see alternative credit sources. So they might ask for cell phone bills, utility bills, proof that you pay your rent on time. They might ask for bank account statements showing your rent coming out. They might just want to see bank account statements showing that there's no defaults and that you have money in your account and you're not in overdraft, like that type of thing. So they're going to want to see some sort of indication that you're responsible with your money. With regards to like income and employment, it's the same as any other mortgage application, right? Salary, hourly, self-employed. They're going to want to see where it becomes tricky is if you don't have guaranteed hours and you've been in the country for less than a year, we're not going to have a 2-year history. So those situations, basically we work on them on a case-by-case basis. Any first-time homebuyer like incentive programs, they're basically the same as the first-time homebuyer programs that we just discussed. Okay, and you might have heard about the foreign buyer ban in the news. Again, as long as you have a work permit and you've applied for your permanent residency, you are good. You're good. I think I'm done, Heidi. Okay. I think I've thrown enough information. Back to you.
Back to me. Great. So that, I mean, really, first and foremost, getting that financial piece in order and all the great tips and advice that Joe's touched on about, you know, having your down payment in order, your income, all of your tax returns up to date, and keeping your debt load down, and, you know, calling in your favors, mom, dad, neighbors, whomever, co-buy and those type of things, but getting all of that in order. And really, going through that process and working with a great lender like Joe to kind of pre-vet that so that you know where you stand, what you need to do, and have sort of a budget in mind that has been vetted, and a lender will lend to that. And so that's really absolutely first, because there's no sense falling in love with a home and shopping for one when your budget hasn't been approved, because and your budget ends up less than what you think it is. So always good first step is getting that money piece in order. And as I mentioned, that's stepped through here, and as well as the incentives that Joe talked about. We touched on all of them. Some are more popular than not, but wanted you to be aware of them. Have you ever heard of them? They're in here. So remember, we'll get you to download this book as well. And then please, Sarah, if you could put in the booking link. If anybody has any particular questions for me, I will gladly, set some time up and we can talk about your specific situation. So that's exciting to get your money in order. So all that, because there's a lot of work to be done and get that all vetted and, worth the effort, because then now the fun stuff starts, and that's the shopping for your home, right? So, there's lots of things that you can see online, but it's really critical because of the sort of the value and the intricacies of buying a home. And as sort of Joe was touching on, that whole balance between interest and pricing and the shifts and what's going out in the future. Really good to have that team of experts on your side. So working with a mortgage lender that you can know and trust. Now, Joe is with Mission 35, which is a fantastic and very large established mortgage lender. So they shop around. I don't think we really talked about that. They have, yeah, like there's like 30 lenders. How many lenders now?
Oh, there's
tons.
Unlimited.
Right.
But, yeah,
so
yeah.
so when you work with someone like Joe, like a mortgage lender, a mortgage broker, as they call them, they shop around based upon your situation. All these different lenders are out there, and they can shop around and get you the best price, the best deal, work with your situation. Certain lenders, I guess, have more of a flavor for working with certain types of business, self-employed, not. Yeah. I'm stretching into your territory, but
there's a lot more options. There's a lot more options when you work with a mortgage agent.
Because they will shop all around, and so I've personally have always basically worked with mortgage lenders along the way. I have worked with traditional banks as well, but I found that whenever I've worked with a mortgage agent, they usually give me a better rate, and they're just great to work with, right? So you can also go to your bank or credit union that you currently work. That's another option too. They typically will have a mortgage department, and you can work with them there as well. So shop around and do that. Just one, I guess, word of caution: if they keep running your credit bureaus, like if you start shopping around and you go too far in the application process, it can affect things a little bit, right?
So you don't want to pull credit multiple times in a short period of time. The nice part about working with myself, a mortgage agent, is that with one credit pull, we can go to multiple lenders. Whereas if you yourself individually go to different lenders, they're all going to pull credit, and you're going to get who knows how many hits in a short period of time. That's going to drag your score down. So
just something to keep in mind. And so when you have team experts like this on your home, you learn these little tips so that they can help navigate to get you the best situation for you, for your home. So you've got a mortgage lender that you've got to have on board up front before you start shopping. Then when you start shopping, using a great real estate agent, because you'll need a real estate agent to sort of get in and view the homes, and a good agent will be able to show you things that have fit your needs, maybe show you what to look for and not look for. It's just good to have that. The days of private sales of homes, it was a little more common during the heat of the market, but you never know. There's always surprises that are there. If you're working with someone that doesn't deal with it all the time, so there's a reason why the structure of real estate exists, to protect everyone involved. And as a real estate agent, we're bound by a code of ethics, and we're licensed to do certain things and to represent the people in the transactions as transparently as possible. So good to have someone that's licensed and working on your side. Then within this transaction, you will always need a lawyer to do the transfer of the monies, and that's where the money flows through from the lenders. So if you don't have a lawyer, specifically one that is familiar with real estate, is kind of a good idea. Your mortgage lender or your realtor will have some suggestions for you. So that's another expert that you're going to need to have pretty upfront. Like as soon as you sign a deal, you'll need to have that in order. And then there could be other experts that you need. A home inspector is one of them. And again, your team works together and they could refer you to somebody. But a home inspector is someone that you would send in. You pay for an inspection before you buy a home, but it gives you a good idea to see if there's any major structural issues or something before you make the big investment that's there. And I'll touch on, that just a little bit more in a moment. Okay, so when you start looking for your home and you've got your team in place, of course you look online, but knowing that budget and having the range there is critically important, that you would have found out from, Joe. Now, one of the things that I always recommend, it's your first home, and typically people move every about 7 years, but your first home, it could be even 3 to 5 to 7 years. And so it's always looking beyond. I mean, my first home, I still actually own my first home, and I have it as a rental property. I'm 5 houses out. Now I have my dream home, right? But along the way, and my first home was a townhome. So I wanted a backyard and all of that stuff of my own. And, I wanted a detached home, but I couldn't get there at first, right? So keeping that in mind, that you want to, when you look at the previous slides on the benefit of buying a home and start building that equity right away, better to get into the market sooner than later. There's always going to be fluctuations, but if you're paying rent somewhere else, the sooner you can redivert that into a mortgage payment, it's going to benefit you long-term. And real estate really is a long-term game, right? So when it comes to location for your home, things have changed in the last 3 years. We all know that a lot. And a lot of people are how and where they work has shifted a lot. So there was a mass exodus out of the Toronto area to all of these remote areas and cottage country because people could work from home. There's been a little reversal of that, but there's a hybrid of that as well. So what I'm saying here is, like, you really do get more for your money when you get outside of the GTA core, right? Oh, yeah. And so you would get maybe larger properties or less expensive properties. So if you can, through your work and your lifestyle and your situation, go a little further than where you originally thought, and it's not going to inconvenience you too. And there's commuting costs and all of that, but you really get more for your buck, especially in areas like, say, the Niagara region. There's some great stuff. And I actually lived in the Niagara region for a little while, and it was funny. I used to drive into Oakville every day, and it wasn't bad. It was like against all the traffic, and it was actually closer than where I am now. It's just kind of weird. Like, you wouldn't think that, but it was just a different traffic flow. So there's lots of great opportunities outside of the core Toronto area that you want to keep in mind if you're able to do that. Or if you need to be closer to the city, and keeping in mind the type of home that you want. As I mentioned, my first home was a townhome. And I mean, as far as pricing, typically you're going condo, then townhome, then semi-detached and detached. So you kind of go up the, sort of the chain. So, condo is going to be your lowest price point. And again, if that's your first purchase, it's a great purchase, especially for later on for rentability and that type of thing, right? So keeping in mind that is your first home, and, getting in the market, setting your sights on the next one. Don't overlook, the possibilities of something a little bit smaller or more remote. And I like to always give an example of, somebody that's done this. So here's Nicholas. He chose on his first time home buy for it to be a first time home buy, but an investment. So he lives in Georgetown and didn't want to spend what it costs to get into the market. He didn't want to commit to that big of a mortgage, those types of things, but he knew he wanted to get into the market. So we shopped to, believe it or not, the Niagara area. And we were able to get this cute little house. It was a 2-bedroom converted to a 1-bedroom that needed some work. We picked it up for about a year and a bit ago for $334,000. Him and his fiance did some sweat equity, totally renovated it all, and upgraded it, and it needed a lot of work and that type of thing. And he's rented it out to a reliable family member there. So so the value of it from 334 went up to 400,000 as far as market value. And then remember, every month his equity is growing because the mortgage is being paid down by the tenant, not even himself. So he was able to feel like confident, even though he's still renting. He feels great that he's now in the market, and then he's got his sights on his next property. He was able to come up with that magic 20% down that would saves you with that. And I know with investments, sometimes they do want 20% down, right?
If
Usually.
they know that it's an investment.
If they,
Sorry.
So anyway, so that's why we have Joe here. He knows all the sides of the table. Okay, so just a real good story that here's Nicholas, a young guy in the market. His operating costs are covered every month. He's gaining equity each and every month with paying down the mortgage and the increase in value over time. And he's already looking on the next deal. So this, again, was his first time, and he's not living it. He's still a renter, but at least got him in the market. So I tend to like to give these as ideas to open up your minds to what combination might work for you. Okay, so once you've dealt with, you've got your money in order, you've been shopping sort of online, you've been going out to view properties, you've been working with a really trusted advisor and a realtor, and you found a property that you love and that you want to put an offer on. So there's some steps to it. Again, things are outlined in here, and please feel free to book time with me. Sarah's been putting that in the booking link. On the details of that. And I don't want to get in too deep, but I want you to understand sort of the whole process there and the importance of of working with the advisors and getting the information. So it's really critical. So when you go to put that offer in on that first home, that you're working with an expert who can do a market assessment, because you want to make sure you're bidding something that's going to get you to purchase that house if that's what you want to do, and that you're not over purchasing it, like overbuying it, right? Because what happens when you pay too much for a house, right? Kid, you want to talk about that?
When you pay too much for a house?
Yeah, like you bid, and it's like, I got to have this house, I'm paying.
Yeah, so essentially what you're saying is if the purchase price is higher than the appraised value?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so it depends on the situation. Like if you have a big down payment, it might not matter because there might still be enough equity there. But if you're going 5 or 10% down and the value comes in short, then you have to come up with the difference.
Yeah.
Basically.
So when you go to
the shortfall. Yeah.
So when you go to purchase, when there's a couple of things that we can still do this day and age. One of them is called a condition in your purchase to financing, saying, can I get financing for this house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you first get approved for financing, you're approved on your credit, your
Right.
stability, all of those things, saying you can go out and shop for a house for this. But then there's almost like a secondary financing, okay, and it's like about this, so that you've bought a house, the bank will then appraise it so they know what its value is and they will lend up to that. So it's sort of a two-part thing. So it's important to maybe look to those realistic numbers when you're going to buy and working with someone, and just know that always subject to appraisal. So something just to be keeping in mind. So in the very competitive markets, you could not put a condition to financing in your purchase. So you had to go in and say, I'm buying it even if I can't get financing, right?
Yeah.
We're still seeing conditions, right? But not as, but the market is getting a little bit more competitive. But whenever you can, and you can go in into purchase and put a finance condition. I know Joe had.
Well, I we were talking about this before, where you have to have confidence, right? Part of the confidence is knowing that you have a pre-approval, a proper mortgage pre-approval. So what I do for my clients, if your mortgage application is rock solid, I'm telling them that. I'm like, listen, your mortgage application is fantastic. Don't worry about the mortgage. I'll take care of the mortgage. Go buy the house. And then we always look at, so for instance, if you're putting an offer in on the house, I always say to Heidi, send me the MLS listing. Let me take a look at the property. And I'll just go through it to see what the property taxes are. If there's anything in the comments in the MLS listing that might scare a lender away, Heidi and I will talk about like what she feels the actual value of it is, so you're not overpaying, you don't run into that situation. So basically we go in with a strategy, right? And if we feel that a firm offer is good, then that's great. Then you'll probably win, probably get the property. You might even get a better deal on it, right? If there's any inkling, any hesitation, if it's a 5% down mortgage and maybe there's a couple other variables in the mortgage that, maybe weaken it or whatever, then I'm going to say, listen, go in with a condition of financing, right? Even if it's just for 3 business days or something like that, that's good enough. I'll have an answer for you before then. But yeah, you've got it's a competitive market again, not like it was before, but I have a feeling it's going to get there again. Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely have your ducks in a row.
Yeah. And again, all the importance of having that team that you build around and that you can trust and have confidence in, right? So real important to reinforce. The other condition that we're seeing more, and we didn't in competitive markets, we're seeing it more now, and I touched on it earlier, and that is a condition to home inspection. So if you're looking, you actually go and you want to put your offer in on a home, and you want to put that financing condition in, and that home inspection is always good to put that in as well. And if the seller accepts it, you have a period of time where you bring in a home inspector. They're going to look at the roof, the foundations, the windows, all of those things, like mold. I just had a listing that was suspect of asbestos in the ceiling, and it was all good in the end, but these things happen. So you get a home inspector to come out and look at that. Now that is, if you're, that is at your own expense. So it's like $300-$500, depending on if you get a written report or not. But that's often money well spent, especially if you don't have anyone in your circle that's really strong in sort of the trades and inspections and that type of thing to go that. So you put a financing to that. You just know that, that's an expense that you bear as the buyer, but it's often money well spent. So that's just what that's about. And so finding a home inspector, you would deal with your realtor as a suggestion. I'd like to give another example, and this is Chris, who also touched on the whole co-buying. So to give you an example of how buying a home can work, he purchased this home for me, and it had 2 levels, bungalow, but with a rented basement apartment. And he was an electrical apprentice. He was still living at home, and he hadn't finished his ticket on his electrical, but this house came up and he had to have it. And so he co-bought it with his grandmother, who, is in that retired money in the bank type thing. He co-bought with her. She helped with the down payment as well. And then during the first 5 years, in that first critical 5-year mortgage, he lived in the basement for a while. He rented the top floor. He rented both sides at one point and moved back home. So he did different variations. And at the end of the 5 years, he's licensed electrician, and he was able to, the market had really gone up in those 5 years. Between that and what he paid down, he gained about a $400,000 equity in the 5 years. Nice. And he really lived at home part of it. Like he wasn't financing even his mortgage. I know both examples are for rental properties, and I guess in retrospect, I have to get a new example. But anyways, these are 2 of my favorite guys, right, to give examples for. But we can talk about that online, book time with me, and I got some other good examples, because I just believe that there's just creativities and wills and ways to do things. I was able to, on my own, amass. I have my custom home, which I built, but I have 2 other rental properties that I financed and did that all on my own. And I just had, before I was a realtor, just a good government job, but it was just all about creativity and putting things all together. So where there's a will, there was a way. I do Absolutely. Believe it. Yeah. And then now he paid back. Now Chris has paid back his grandmother. He's on title loan because the grandmother was on title to the house. She's off title. She's been paid back. He's on that, and he's Bob's your uncle.
Do you want to talk about that for a second?
Sure.
Really quickly. So if you do have a co-borrower, like say you put like grandma on the deal with you, right? Once you can qualify for the mortgage on your own, all you have to do is go to your lender, do a credit application with them. And if you qualify, they're just going to send paperwork to your lawyer, and grandma signs off, and she's off the mortgage. It's called a release of covenant. So it's typically when there is a co-signer, it's not for that long. First-time home buyers, they go their income goes up so fast, their credit gets built up so fast, the equity in the home builds up so fast. That co-signer is not there for a long time. So I just wanted to mention that.
Good. That's great. Good to know. Okay, great. Now, so you've gone out, you found the perfect home, you've negotiated you worked with your experts, you've got a signed offer. So that's saying, yes, the seller has agreed to sell you the property at this price. And hopefully there's conditions to protect you of the financing and home inspection. So there's going to be deadlines and that need to be managed, because these are legal contracts. So you need to make sure that you're adhering to that. So getting a good realtor that's on the ball, making sure that none of those pass. So you're meeting all however many 5 days to get financing and home inspection, for example. So then it becomes a firm deal. And then you start packing and do all these other things. But a couple of other things is knowing that you'll always need to have insurance to satisfy. This is like house insurance to satisfy the mortgagors. Joe also touched on there's other insurances which are mortgage related, but you'll need to have things about the nuts and bolts of your house as far as utilities and the insurance and that type of thing. So you want to line all those up as you're preparing for closing, getting all the moving and all of that type of thing. But I like to bring to something else to someone's attention, to your attention, is the importance of having your money readily available. Joe touched on, making sure if it's coming out of Canada, ideally you want it in the country for 3 months, as well if it's gifted. They're just having access to that money. But when it comes to when you get that signed deal, there's a deadline of 24 hours after you sign that firm deal that the deposit is due, and it's due in even before you satisfy the condition. So as soon as you sign an agreement, you have 24 hours typically to come up with the deposit. Now, the deposit is just an amount that's in good faith that this is a contract and you're committing to it. Now, that varies, and it's not stated as an exact amount. There is a recommendation on the listings, usually 5, usually 10 or 20,000, or in a larger properties, it could be even more money. But that money has to be, my point here is that money's got to be in your bank account. You'll be able to pull it out and get a money order and get that deposit in within the 24 hours. So, you know, if you pull out money from, like, say, an RSP, or it's locked in somewhere, it might take you a day or two or more to get that money out. So you want to make sure when you're close and you get that money and you have at least the deposit in your bank account so that you can expedite that stat, right? And then, of course, your down payment is going to be needed, and you know, through the process and to your lawyers. So you need to have access to that money. But the main important thing is having at least the deposit money of whatever thousands those are ready to go. So just sort of as a quick sort of recap, financing. Do you want to do the quick recap on what financing, the 3 things? Any key bullets? Yeah.
Basically, just come talk to me before you buy no, so, you know, I like to look at everything before the application. Before the offer goes in. I need to see your income. I need to know how much money you have for down payment. I need to see your credit. That's going to help me. Number 1, find out if you qualify. Number 2, find out how much you qualify for. And most importantly, which this also makes Heidi's job easier, you can figure out a price ceiling, right? So we know the highest you can go, right? Yeah.
Okay. And then, you know, once you know where that money piece is, getting those, you know, you've got the lender, you got your agent, you've got your lawyer, your home inspector, then you're going to do the online search, then you're going to in-person search. You're going to make sure that you're putting an offer in that's to market value with the proper conditions, protecting yourself. You're going to have that money available because your offer is going to get accepted, right? Because you're going to get great advice and you're going to get a great home, and you're going to have that money ready to be available that you can come up with in 24 hours and then dump it thereafter. And then you're going to have, you know, a great team that's making sure you manage all of the details through this exciting time. So again, if you want to book some time with me, there is the link on the screen, as well as Sarah's been putting it in the thing. The guide is, this is the link to the guide. We'll also send it out to you in the into the text string of information. So please do that, and please, any questions that you have now, happy to answer them, because that's basically our official thing.
All right.
Yeah, and here we are. That's where you catch us. But we've got a few minutes here if anybody has any questions. Have we got any questions in the chat? You can just go into the chat option at the bottom of your screen there. I didn't make anybody sort of use the chat and tell me where they're from and anything. I just dove right in. So at the bottom of your screen, you've got the little bubble there. This is chat. So feel free to go in there and ask any questions. And Sarah, nothing? There's no, can you? We were so thorough. No one has any questions?
There was only one question at the beginning about what size house I think Joe was talking about, but I'm not sure which one you were talking about.
Sorry, what was the question?
What size of house?
Oh, what size of house? Oh, can you, whoever put that question, can you expand a little bit? Sorry, Monisha? Monisha, can you expand on that for me? Yeah. While she's typing that, can I talk about how important it is to have a good real estate agent?
Oh, please do. Oh, please do.
You know, I see mortgage applications from all kinds of real estate agents. I see all kinds of stuff. I can't say this enough. Please hire a good real estate agent who has integrity, who works hard, who knows what they're doing, who knows what to look for, who knows how to negotiate. There's a lot of agents out there that shouldn't be in the industry, I gotta be honest with you. Heidi's an award-winning.
Oh, I got this today. Oh. I got this. Wait, camera. I came into this award really today. I didn't even go to the awards. Isn't that terrible? I was too busy selling real estate. I didn't even go to get my little award at our awards gala.
She's really, really good at what she does. And honestly, that makes my life easier. That makes your life easier. That makes everybody's life easier when you're working with someone who knows what they're doing. You know, you're purchasing a house. You don't want to trust that to just anybody. Okay, so work with professionals.
Thank you. Thank you.
The question is,
Question is, there's one, will banks consider potential rent earnings as income for qualifying mortgage?
okay, good question. Yes, under certain circumstances.
Do you want to repeat the question? Did
Oh,
you hear
sorry.
that? Sorry.
Oh, I apologize. Where did it go?
Will banks consider
Will banks consider?
potential rent earnings as income for qualifying?
Okay, will banks consider rental income on the subject property that you're buying to help qualify the deal? Okay, yes. If it is if there is a secondary unit and the secondary unit is self-contained, meaning it has its own entrance, it's not really connected to the other unit, as long as it has a kitchen, a bathroom, okay, a bedroom, yes, you can. Okay, now how much of that rental income we can use depends on which lender we go to. We have lots of options. Also, you talked about clients that their first home is a rental property. The first house I bought was a rental property. So if you're buying a rental property and it's your first home, basically what the lender does is they say, okay, we'll use the full rental income on that property to qualify the deal. But what they do is they want to see that they want to include what's called a shelter payment in the application. So even if you're still living with mom and dad, they'll say, okay, we got to throw in an $800 a month rent payment in the application or something like that. Okay, so the answer
You
is
would
yes.
have to pay. They put that as part.
So it's almost like they just add an $800 expense onto your application as a hypothetical rental payment that you're making. But yeah, you can do it. And we have some lenders that use rental income very, very aggressively. Yeah, so that's definitely something to consider.
Okay, and Amanda says, I'm on a work permit currently, so I would need to at least work for a year and then start the PR process to qualify buying a house. Is this understanding correct?
As long as you have applied for the permanent residency, you have to have applied for it. You don't have to have it. So I'm not sure what the requirements are. Is she saying that you have to be in the country for 1 year in order to apply for it? Is that what she's saying?
Work for at least a year, yeah.
In order to apply for it.
PR process.
Okay, so then yeah, in that case, it might be a year. Typically, you're going to need a year anyways, because like if you don't have that foreign credit bureau, they're going to need to see 12 months of like utility bills or 12 months of cell phone bills or something like that. So usually, the New to Canada program is for people who have been in the country for 5 years or less. Usually, at least a year has gone by before someone tries to buy a house. But these rules aren't written in stone. You have a really good job. You're in the country. You're working for a great company. Company brought you in from another country or something like that. Lenders make exceptions. Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, and Sybil says, I presently own a house with a $570,000 mortgage, 3 bedrooms, buying a second for $820,000, paid down $70,000, new building scheduled to be closed in 2023. Not really a question.
So you have an existing home.
Oh, I am hoping I can, and they followed up. I am hoping I can keep the present house and still acquire a new one.
Yeah. As long as there's enough equity, we can make that happen. As long as there's enough equity. So you'd probably have to pull money out of. Sorry, should I read the questions that everybody? So basically, you own a property and you're buying a new construction. The new construction is closing in the future at some point, and essentially you want to keep this house and buy this house, right? So the way to do it is you pull equity from this house, you pull money from this house, you refinance it, and you use that money for the down payment on this one. Ideally, you refinance this one with a traditional lender, and you buy this one with a traditional lender. That's going to be your least expensive option. But we talk about how quickly the value of real estate goes up. Even if you have to use like an alternative lender that might be slightly more expensive, in my opinion, it's worth it because you're doubling the value of your real estate portfolio. So yeah, it can totally be done. We do stuff like that all the time. It's a great strategy.
Okay, and Manisha, that's the one from the beginning, says the working, which was shown in the beginning, the slide, that the property prices were going down and the interest rates going up. The price of the property, which was indicated, what was the size of that house?
The Royal Bank did that chart, so I'm not exactly
Yeah.
sure.
I could talk about that chart if you
Yeah,
want.
oh,
Yeah. So basically the idea is, a year ago you could buy a house and it was insanely expensive, but the interest rates were like tiny, right? So, but now what's happened is values have come down, interest rates have gone up. So essentially what's happening is, your mortgage payments the same essentially, but you bought the house for like hundreds of thousands of dollars less. So what we're saying is a lower purchase price is, in this case, much better than a lower interest rate. Like you're saving tons of money. That's the idea behind it. The rates have been all over the place. Like it's almost impossible to follow. The variable rates basically went like this, straight up. Fixed rates went up and now they've come down. So we saw the value of houses go way down and now they're starting to come back up again. So we're kind of in kind of like a sweet spot right now where the market's strong, but it's not crazy. Like you can get in, but I have a feeling that a year from now we're going to be in 2021's territory again. But I don't know if that answers the question.
and I guess too, each, I do market reports for the various regions that I service every month, and there's sort of average price points of homes that can give you sort of, if you're interested in looking at that, but you want a quick answer, just reach out to me, book some time with me, and I can sort of spell out to you what's the average price of the homes in the different areas are. Like I said, Niagara region would probably be sort of the lowest, then over to Hamilton, then over to the Mississauga area in that sort of order.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the fixed rate, I think the fixed rate that you had in that example was 5.24. Those rates are lower now, right? So like a 30-year amortization, you might be at like 4.89, right? So, and that's a big difference. Like your payment's going to be way lower. Your principal is going to go down a lot faster. You're going to qualify for way more at that interest rate. So, and that was only from February. Like how much the rates have changed in such a short period of time. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And on that note, if there's any more questions in the chat, is there, we can,
Yep, there's two.
well, we're at time now. Okay, but are they quick or are they?
It's a paragraph. Malik,
If anybody has to leave, I don't want to keep, those at a 8:00 hard stop, but if we can just answer those couple questions now.
Okay, so Malik has three. What kind of mistakes do you guys see that first time buyers make? Can you use the same agent to buy a new house while selling your own house? And do you recommend fixed or variable interest for this year?
Do you want to take the real estate question first?
Yeah, yes, you can use the same agent to buy and sell a house, and it's often a good idea because you get to know them and trust them. So probably a good idea, unless they don't service, they're just so vastly different areas. That was the one question. You've got the variable fixed and.
Can you use the same agent to buy?
Yeah, we got that one.
Yeah, okay.
And there was.
Do you recommend fixed or variable?
Do I recommend fixed or variable?
This year?
The fixed is way lower than the variable. It's like substantially lower than the variable. I do think that the variable is going to go down. The question is how quickly, because it's hard to say to someone to voluntarily pay an extra $500 a month. You know what I mean? So I personally right now feel like the 5-year fixed is the way to go. It's also going to help you qualify for way more. Like if you're trying to do variable, you're going to have to qualify at like 8.5% or something. Whereas if you do a fixed, you qualify at like 6.49 or something. Like that's a massive difference. We're talking about like a mortgage like this, right? So right now, fixed is pretty much the way that everybody's going. Mistakes, I think the mistakes that first time home buyers
that was
make.
the one, yeah.
Well, We could talk about from a mortgage standpoint. Having too much debt is a big one, right? Maxing out your credit cards, having a big car loan, buying a big car before you buy your house. Those are big ones. That's probably it. And just, you know, just making sure that you have a down payment and having a good credit score. Those are the most important things. What other mistakes can I think of?
And I think from a real estate perspective, you know, buying a good solid home, even if it's smaller than you want or whatever, having it inspected, making sure there's no, you know, structural issues and things like that.
I got one.
Oh, you got one?
Waiting. Like,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
you know, like Heidi said, your first house is not going to be your forever house. It's not. My first house was, honestly, it was a pile of crap. Like, it was terrible. So it was a 2-story duplex with no basement. Pipes froze every winter. I didn't know what to do. It was terrible. I got my foot in the door, you know, and the rest, you know, you get that first house out of the way, and then the rest come a lot easier, man. So if you keep trying to wait, okay, save more money so I can buy the more expensive house, save more money so I can buy a more expensive house, you're going to be on a treadmill, and years are going to go by before you actually own a home. Just buy something. Like Heidi said, you know, even if you rent it out and you don't live in it, just get in the market, build that equity. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
There's about 5 or 6 months.
Oh my goodness.
So,
Okay.
can we put them in emails maybe?
Yeah,
Or-
if you want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to. Okay, we're gonna kind of getting over time. So what we're gonna do is we will answer these and email them out. Is that correct? Is that what you want to
Let's
do?
do that. Sure.
You want, or do you want it? It's up to you.
I'm good.
I'm
I
good.
can
If
be
you
here
guys want
all
to see, I
night
thought
if
that's what you
want.
meant. Okay, sorry.
We could start cracking open some bottles if you want.
Okay.
Can you read that at all?
Where are we at? Which one is
Okay,
it?
so we're at Jimmy. I'm a first-time home buyer, new to Canada.
Okay.
Same, came as PR. Can you read that or no?
Yeah. So I'm a first-time home buyer, new to Canada, came as a permanent resident. I've not built up my RSP, first-time home buyer. So if I buy now, then I'll not be able to use any of the first-time tax benefits for my next home. Am I understanding that right? Yes. You can only use it once. You can only use it once. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah.
Your first-time homebuyer benefits, you can only use it once. If you sell your house and you do not own any real estate for 5 years, then you kind of get them back again, right? So that's how that works. What's the next one there?
Oh, okay.
I am looking for my
Okay.
first home for a family of 5. Moved to Burlington during COVID about 1.5 years ago. Not afford a new home. At the time I moved, we decided to rent, which was even worse. I had to pay first and last plus 3 months in advance. In other words, I used my savings to get a home to rent. I paid $3,000 for rent. I am afraid and lost.
And then she gets, and
Yeah.
she wants to know if she can get help. I think she came out there. So basically,
Well,
Yeah, how can I get it?
yeah, that is an unfortunate situation. 5 could not afford a home. I'm assuming you've never owned a home, like you are a first-time home buyer. I would, you know, Burlington's expensive. Like I said, you know, it's going to be tough to buy a home, like your first home in Burlington. I would say you got to go outside of Burlington. I don't know if you want
Niagara
to touch on that.
region or any like Brantford has some
Amen.
good. I just
Yeah.
sold a cute little house in Brantford for 450,000,
Yeah.
2-bedroom. You know,
You know, if you're buying something in Burlington and you want to buy with, say, 5% down, you know, the way that it works is for the first 500,000 is 5% down. Everything over 500,000, you need 10% of everything over 500,000. So if you buy a $600,000 house, you need a $35,000 down payment. So if you buy something in Niagara region for like 400,000, you only need like 20 grand. You buy something in Burlington for, you know, 800,000, you need more than double, like way more than double. So just all you gotta do is get in the market, and then your rate of return grows exponentially, and then you can always sell and move to that Burlington market. That's the way I see it. Yeah.
Annie, if you have 135,000 credit, it is 740 to 600, both in good job.
Okay. Okay, I get that.
First time home buyer.
Okay, so you have $135,000 available for down payment, and then you've got two applicants, credit scores are 740 and 600, both have good jobs. Yeah, definitely, we can get you a mortgage, absolutely.
There was one, is there a data source which says at what price houses were sold in a place? So if you're looking for sold data,
Yeah, Heidi.
me, I can look up wherever you want. And I do that. If you're looking, that's part of how we determine a market value of what you want to go in with. We always look at what's sold in the area to predict what the purchase is.
Sorry, and then Kyle is there an advantage to a first time home buyer TFSA versus a regular TFSA?
Oh, you mean RRSP?
Or regular TFSA, or the new first time
Yeah.
TFSA.
The only difference is that with the first time home buyer, you can only use it. I think you can. It's new, so I'm still not 100% up to date on it. But you get all the benefits of an RRSP, but when you pull the money out to purchase your new home, there's no requirement to pay that money back. That's really the only difference. But you can. I'm not sure, but I think you can only pull the money out to buy a house, if I'm not mistaken. Whereas with an RRSP, you know what, let me look into that. But basically the one major sticking point is that with the first time home buyer's account, you don't have to pay that money back over 20 years. It's really not a huge difference one way or the other. You're not making a mistake if you pick one over the other. So I wouldn't stress over that. Just get that money in there as quickly as you can. Yeah.
And I think that's it for the questions. We are still available to answer any questions. Book some time with me. Sarah's got the booking link's been up there. Even on the webinar string of all the registrations that we kept bombarding you with, so that you would arrive here today. We are here to answer any questions and help you on your home buying journey. Thank you, Sarah, Daniela, and Todd, and Joe for coming here and sharing all this advice. I hope it's found that you found this helpful, and please do keep in touch. We'd love to help you buy that first home. That's a wrap.